Hi, I'm Josh Cadillac, and welcome to my podcast, Know Your Shit. I've been blessed to see great success, as well as seeing the bottom up close and personal in 2008. And if there's one lesson I've learned, is that if you want to have success and differentiate yourself from everyone else out there, you need to know your shit. As a successful real estate and crypto investor and an educator, it drives me insane that people do not immerse themselves in their craft. Everyone is so busy advertising and testing new sales techniques, they forget the most important thing, the product. Here I want to talk to the folks that got this right, the most successful people in the world in every industry. Bring them to you and find out what they learned in their business that made it great. When you listen to my podcast, you will know for sure that the topics and experts we have on have one thing in common. They know their shit. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Know Your Shit podcast, where our knowledge and pride in what we do drives us to be excellent. My name is Josh Cadillac, and I'll be in the driver's seat for today's show as we strive to learn how to stop doing deals and start closing for life. We've got a great show for you today, and we've got a great guest here today. I want to introduce you folks all to Leigh Brown. She is awesome, great person to hang out. Leigh, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. I'm ready to dig in.
Let's do it. So Leigh, maybe the best place to start, rather than me trying to do a halfway job of doing it, why don't you tell folks, what is it you do?
I need to think of a faster way to say the fact that I've written 3 best-selling books plus a cookbook, and I'm a mom, and I have 2 teenagers and a husband. I have a yard full of chickens, and also along the way, I'm a realtor. I own my own real estate office. I'm an international speaker who's gone all over the world to talk to realtors and to leadership conferences about motivation and being self-determined. And I've run for political office twice, lost both times. I used to sell chainsaws and work on Wall Street, and I live by text threads and Substack. And is that fast enough to tell you what I do? It's a lot of things.
I feel like you did a pretty good job. I mean, that was definitely the Reader's Digest version. So you know what? The next question is going to kind of be tough because there's a lot in there. You're kind of like me. I have a whole bunch of stuff to unpack when people ask me what I do as well. What got you started doing those things? So pick the one you want, or all of them, or however you'd like to. But what got you started?
I won't start with the chickens because then your podcast will go way over its bounds, but just suffice it to say we could have a whole episode about that. But I became a realtor 22 years ago full-time because I couldn't handle the corporate world anymore. I was in corporate sales for Husqvarna. I was the only woman on the sales floor selling premium chainsaws, weed trimmers, and lawnmowers. And it wasn't for me to do somebody else's expectations, hit my goals, and then be told, we got to rework your formula because we shot it wrong. And so you never were able to achieve what you could achieve. And I said, what am I going to do? My dad, who'd been a realtor for years, said, just come do real estate. And I said, well, why not? May as well. Anybody could do it. I landed in real estate and found out where I was supposed to be because I didn't know at that time that real estate was 1,000 different pathways. I thought about it in the way that the mainstream media has portrayed it, which is you dress up, you drive around, you stick a sign in a yard, and you get paid. But in reality, I now own multiple businesses, and I've been able to speak and train in addition to basically be a mama hen for brand new agents coming out of the gate so that I can help raise a different generation of professionals in a space that is mainly known for its mediocrity. And I'm not okay with that.
That was very kind, known for its mediocrity. The term I typically use, a very technical term called sucks. I think that real estate in general, and this is the crazy thing, Leigh, when I teach, one of the questions I love to ask agents is what percentage of agents out there are bad agents? Now, this is a room full of people that are in real estate. So all they interact with is customers and other agents. That's it. And so, to be, 50, 60%. I said, look, I'll give you a filter to help you out. What percentage of agents don't answer their phone? 80, 90%. I said, you do realize our code of ethics requires us to use all due diligence in helping our customer achieve their goals, right? So literally an agent that doesn't answer their phone is unethical. I mean, that's one. It is one filter of many that a decent agent should be able to clear. So the number is north of 80% from the people in the actual industry.
But like anybody else in today's narcissistic society, they say that's everybody except me. I am the perfect one. I have a reason for not answering my phone. And so they make all the excuses for themselves, but not for anybody else. And so I would also point out, when you're looking at those great swaths of realtors, the national number is that in the last 12 months, around 70%, 70 did between 0 and 1 transactions.
Yep.
And so they're barely involved in the business anyway, which actually may be leading to their mediocrity and leading to their disconnect from the desire to treat each other professionally. But it also goes back to what I was saying. You have to not only fix this, but you also have to be willing to fix outside of us and self-police that code of ethics if you want it to mean anything.
Well, I would say to you that, I love the fact that you use the term mama henning a bunch of new agents, because when I came in, there wasn't really a mama hen there. I had to go figure it out for myself. And so I took all the mainstream education that was out there. I have more real estate certifications and designations than anybody on the planet, I think. I got them all.
Which is already above and beyond. How many of your peers did that? I got a pocket card. New Jersey says I'm good. I'm just going to roll with it.
Oh, it's got my picture on it and everything. I'm official. It's real, right? And so the thing that I picked up on is none of that education really prepared me to do the business. There's 3 things, and you tell me if I'm, this is kind of the place, and the book that I just wrote, this is what it's about. So you've been mama henning for a while, so tell me if I'm getting this wrong. I think we get 3 minor things wrong in real estate. We get ourselves wrong. We forget that we have to be the CEO of our own selves now. We get our customer wrong, because our mainstream real estate education is all about building rapport, turning that customer into a friend. Well, here's the thing. My customer didn't come to me because they didn't have friends. They came to me because they had a real estate problem. So maybe I should show them, instead of trying to be their friend, that I can solve a real estate problem. And the third thing we get wrong, dead wrong, is the product. We have no idea. This is the one that I talk about all the time. I ask agents, when was the last time you saw a real estate advertisement that talked about what's good about real estate? What does a real estate advertisement look like? Agent's face, little house in the corner, buy from me.
I'm number 1. You forgot that I'm number 1. You got to have that little hashtag #1 agent.
Oh, always, absolutely. Number 1 at whatever. My mom told me I was number 1. So, it was first in birth order, perhaps. I don't know. It definitely doesn't have anything to do with the quality of product they put out. And so to me, that's the fundamental, that's what, like, I'm glad I'm not alone, right? Because it's been like this John the Baptist voice in the wilderness situation going on with me, saying, hey guys, I've taken CCIM, CRS, GRI, you name it. I took them all. Nobody ever told me. I get told to write one more business plan, I'm going to vomit. If I get told to take and try to figure out my customer's disc profile again, or mirroring body language, or all these friend-making activities, look, I'm a big believer in body language and negotiating that way and paying attention. But for me, I want to show them that I'm the resource they're looking for to solve their problem before I try to be their friend. I want to do the 2 things simultaneously, but I want the horse in front of the cart.
Well, the DISC, that kind of stuff matters so that you can convey information and knowledge. If you don't have the knowledge to convey as a professional, it doesn't matter if you know how they're wired or not. And so I think they can coexist.
They do.
But to the point that you're making, in real estate, you talk about the ads that we see. How often do you see a realtor talk about real estate being a hedge against inflation? We know that's the number 1 thing the consumer is worried about right now. And it should have been how everybody voted, and it wasn't. I can't figure that out. But in reality, they're dealing with it every single day. And real estate is a pure hedge. But our realtors either don't understand it, or they're not talking about it, or they're afraid to talk about it because nobody else is talking about it. And so they're afraid to be John the Baptist, because he did wind up beheaded. And they're afraid they'll get
beheaded. Didn't work out so good
too.
for him. Did not work out.
They forgot about all the work that he did before he wound up dead on a platter.
True. But see, this is the thing. I'm the only person that I know of that has a CE approved course for inflation anywhere in the country. Why? Because you know what, the thing that makes me so excited about that class, it's the first class I've ever figured out to get CE approved that allowed me. I've written 35 at this point. The only one I've ever written that allows me to go in there and talk to agents about how to tell what kind of market they're in, how to watch the news, and figure out how to have talking points for your conversation. Hey, look, guys, CPI came down the last 4 months running. Why did it come down?
It didn't come down. It looked like it came down.
It looked like it came, absolutely.
Of it. But again, this is all knowledge and education. I think if you call that class how to make great videos on TikTok, and then you made the whole thing about inflation, they'd be in the room for it, because they'd think they were going to learn about TikTok, and you'd actually trick them into learning about inflation. Because what makes my heart sad is how many of these agents don't even crave the knowledge that we're discussing right here. They don't want it because they would rather go do things the way they've always been done, which is why we're not respected by the public until the public is in the middle of a really problematic transaction. And then they love their realtor. And so back to you feeling like John the Baptist by yourself in the wilderness, understanding the value. Consumers understand the value too. When they're in the middle of a wild transaction, they've got a great realtor, they will go to the mats for that one who understands it, who's knowledgeable and gets it. But then that agent doesn't even turn around and talk about it. It's kind of crazy inducing.
It really is. It's brutal because we are really quantifying how poorly we're perceived by the public.
And we're not terrible. We're actually really good people for the most part. Like,
it's true, but I mean, there's also this other piece of it, right? Like I'll teach a class and I'll have 200 agents in the room. There's X thousand agents in the association. And I say to them, look, I know I'm helping you. You're the ones that are trying to make your business better. Those other clowns out there are the ones that are faking it till they make it. They're the ones that had that great source of real estate information called HGTV that told them everything they ever needed to know about how to do real estate. HGTV doesn't talk about inflation, so obviously I don't need it. And so this is the mindset that we're trying to fight. And look, when the customer meets us, they think four things. This is what the studies say. They think we're lazy, we're not very smart, we're overpaid, and we're all about our commission. If you don't combat that from the second you walk in the door, if you're not walking in the door trying to say, hey, look, it might be true of others, but that's not how I do what I do, you're not meeting the customer where they're actually at. When they hear real estate agent, that's what they think.
Now that's a pre-social media world. In a pre-social media world, you could introduce that knowledge at the door when you met them. Now they have to find all of that out before you even cross their mind. And so realtors have to understand they got to show the value before they ever meet the customer. And that's part of this whole disconnect between the way we used to do it, which this is still, I believe, firmly a face-to-face business. It is belly to belly because you do have to understand the body language and read the tension in the household. But to get to the door and not have to fight uphill, what is your messaging saying? What does the website say? What did your phone call say when you talked to them and they wanted to set an appointment in the first place? Did you just say, hey, I'd love to come over, stick a sign in the yard? Or did you actually ask questions? Why are you moving? What do you need to know? What should I prepare? Where are you in the process so that you can bring a professional presentation to them and then set apart? I think we just wait too long sometimes. And if you think about real estate training for years, we've always said we earn our money between contract and closing. Well, that's too late now. Yep. You need to earn the commission dollars and earn the professional value before you ever have the first conversation.
The place I like to phrase that from, Leigh, is I need to earn the customer. And that's, there's an arrogance to real estate, which is that idea that we don't even advertise our product, yet our customer comes to us wanting it. I mean, do you realize, if I want to embarrass an agent, Leigh, I ask him one question: what's good about real estate? And normally the answer I normally get is something along the lines of, well, I get to make my own hours. I meet such interesting people.
So it's about themselves.
Yeah. What's good about the thing that you're trying to get people to buy? You're trying to get people to buy this thing. You're in sales. What's good about the thing you're trying to sell them? Oh, well, the school zones, and it's better to take and pay your own mortgage rather than pay rent. Whoa. You're supposed to know the thing you want me to do it, but we're spoiled because our customer comes to us actually wanting the thing. And so we can get away with not having good product knowledge. And so that's left us in a place where, and I agree with you that the big change is the kind of knowledge you have to have. So like, I know that my customer may know more about a micro market than I do. If they've been thinking about and researching living in Shady Hills Estates for the last 2 years, and they've got printouts of the meetings of the board, the minutes, I'm not going to compete with that. But what I do need to know then is the macro market and the process better than anyone. And so my place in the way in the door is I'm trying to turn them into and this is what I tell the customer: I'm trying to turn you the best buyer you can possibly be. I want to make sure you understand this better than anybody else. So even if you choose not to use me, nobody can pull the wool over your eyes. You're going to know how this thing works. And if you choose to bless me with your business after that process, cool. If not, that's okay. I might not be a perfect fit for everybody, but at the end of the day, nobody's going to get the fastball by the time I'm done with you. And
But it
that's
also means we have to have the humility to know that the consumer knows more than we do. When they say, well, I've been reading the HOA minutes, how many agents will say, that's not important, and they'll blow it off because they don't know it? Instead, it should turn into curiosity and say, well, what did you see in that last set of minutes? I haven't seen them. So what was in there? And should I go back and read them and get into that space of get out of judgment and into curiosity?
sure.
Ask them what they know and see what mattered to them. Because if they noticed that the board has been asking for an increase in dues and they're worried about that, that's your red flag about budget issues. It's also your red flag about who's running the HOA, which means they may not stay in Shady Hills because they have those concerns. And now you as an agent should know how to serve them. So then they look over here at Willow Oaks. You better pull the HOA minutes for Willow Oaks before they do, because they just
What's next.
the biggest red sign on the planet.
I love it. Absolutely. The thing that I tell agents is it's kind of like, agents that have kids. I say, do you know when your kids' sporting events are? Do you know what's going on in your kid's life? And they'll, yeah. Cool. Like, are you interested? Like if somebody was to start talking to you, the teacher was hey, let me tell you about your kid. You know what your kid said? You'd be into that conversation, right? You might not be happy to hear it, but you'd want to know what would happen, right?
You hope so. I'm worried about today's parents. That's a different conversation.
That is a different conversation. You're right. Look, you've just adopted a new kid in real estate. You should be curious about everything that goes on. For me, if I find out something about electrical work that goes on when you replace a kitchen, how the code has changed, I want to know that.
Yes, red alerts. Now you know to look for it in another house.
Absolutely.
But that's also learning as you go. You do one house that has a crack in the foundation and you find out how you have to fix it. The next thing you do at every other house, you're looking for cracks in the foundation, which is kind of like, you don't know this, Josh, but when you're pregnant, all you see anywhere are other pregnant people, because it's that frontal lobe has been activated. So it should be the same thing in real estate, where you're always looking to have something else activated so you can bring extra bits of value to every subsequent customer and hopefully then client that you meet, which is also a reminder to all of us, you never are going to know everything in real estate. I learn something new every day, and I'm going to wager that you do too, because even when you're writing a class, you get to do extra research and you're like, man, I wish I'd known this 5 years ago. I could have explained it in a more impactful way.
Absolutely. And look, tying those two things together, even right there, is such a big piece that nobody in education talks about. They're going to teach you all this stuff, but unless you figure out how to take the time to turn it around and give it back to the customer in a way that's meaningful and understandable to the customer, you've done nothing. I mean, I know so many agents that know so much stuff that can't communicate in a meaningful way. They're useless. They can't help anybody.
Because they know so much. So one of the things I tell my coaching clients, I'm like, use the voice recorder on your phone and record yourself at a buyer consultation or at a listing presentation. And in that hour and a half, when you play that back, you'll probably be amazed at how many little bits of knowledge you dropped on that person across the table, but you never heard it. And so when you go back and reactivate your own frontal lobe and you listen to it, now you realize I am bringing value. So I'd like to bring more. And that should be your general reaction. Your competitive nature is, I've brought this much. Now I'm going to bring this much plus two. And I think that's a confidence builder too, when a really good agent doesn't know how good they are because they've absorbed too much negative talk from the outside. I mean, granted, we kind of started this in a negative viewpoint of agents, but we're talking about the big swath that don't want to get better. There's also a big swath that would love to be the most professional, amazing realtor ever. And so if you want to be in that second group, this is one of the things that you do. You build your own confidence up, because I promise you, you know more than you realize, and you know more than the consumer does, but you didn't tell them that.
Absolutely. And I've done a lot of coaching as well. And I know exactly, like there's two groups of agents that come to my mind, and it's people fall pretty much clearly into one of those two categories. There's the group that has been made to feel less than, that are much better than they actually think they are. And there's the group that needs a drill sergeant in their life. And, that need to be told, you know what, that's BS. You should be doing better. And why aren't you doing better? Why do you accept that from yourself? And so you're right. This did kind of take that first turn at the beginning, but you're right. There's a lot of agents out there that have great hearts, that want to do great work, and figuring out how to take and value themselves is an important part of, honestly, the coaching thing. I think that's been the most rewarding part of the coaching thing for me, is being able to help those people that are better than they think they are. But
well, I mean, we're in an industry that goes back to those original three things that you said. The profession on the whole has not focused on telling the story better. And it all goes back to putting a different message forward. If we don't want the public to think of us just as a bunch of blood-sucking money grubbers, why are we not showing different value? But there has to be leadership that's willing to show a different value set and not just do things the way they've always been done. And sadly, in real estate, which this drives me crazy, it's a bunch of entrepreneurs. They're all running micro businesses. They all think of themselves as renegades, yet they behave like sheep when it comes to marketing, and they just do what everybody else does. And in fact, you can see it in a really pronounced way since the second quarter of 22, when interest rates started to rise. The number of realtors out there making TikToks and Instagram reels and any kind of social post saying, go ahead and buy, rates are going to come back down and you can refi. And I'm like, you people don't understand macroeconomics, because I still don't think we're done with the rise. And for the record, y'all, we're recording this end of November 2022. I don't think the rise is over, because I know macroeconomics. But when you're putting a message out there that says you can just refi when it goes lower, the reason they're doing it is because somebody else already said it. They're just repeating what they heard.
regurgitating.
So if you want to get better, the first thing I would say is you got to control the story. Don't wait for somebody else to control it. But before you post it, ask a question and make sure that whatever you're saying is a verifiable source and is real information. And you're not just following the herd. We have a herd mentality in real estate, which drives me crazy, because each neighbor that I talk to about their house should have a unique and specially personalized story and solution set for me, because they're all unique, different circumstances.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with you. The rates are going to go higher.
I think we're going to 9. Where do you think we're going?
Oh, I think that we're going to run up at double digits eventually.
You think so?
Well, I mean, look, the last time that we had an inflationary market like this, the only way they were able to stop it was to take the federal funds rate higher than the rate of inflation. Our federal
That's
funds
the only
rate.
way you stop inflation in any market is the
Right.
intersection has to change. We don't calculate inflation the same way now.
This is true. This is true.
And fiat money is going to change from a U.S. standard to, I believe, a Chinese yuan standard because of the BRICS coalition. I think
the one thing that
that's
keeps
gonna have an impact.
the thing that keeps, I think, getting in the way of that is China's response to COVID has been so authoritarian. They keep sabotaging their own economy with closing parts of their economy down.
They do, but they're hoarding gold. Have you been watching the gold?
Absolutely, they're hoarding gold. But see, you would expect gold prices to have performed better than they have.
Yeah, there's
And so it's interesting to me, but I think that you're looking at double digit interest rates. And I think that at some point that's the things that are going to become very interesting are going to be all the things that were interesting in the 70s and early 80s, assignable mortgages. This is going to be, that's going to be the short sales that we were talking about in 2010, 11, and 12. Well, that's what we're going to be looking at, mortgages that can be assigned. A lot of commercial mortgages, a lot of investment mortgages are still assignable. VA mortgages are assignable. Nothing else is. Why NAR isn't making the push to take and get Freddie and Fannie to change their standards to make those loans assignable would have been huge.
Well, they have been working on it quietly. However, because of the current situation with a certain alphabet agency who shall remain nameless and their lawsuit against the realtors, there is a concerted effort to fight on all cylinders on the big front and then quietly work on some of the others. And so there is work happening. It's just there's a lot of fights going on right now. And I look at this as back to the issue of telling the story. I don't think that certain alphabet agency would be as laser beam focused on real estate if realtors had done a more effective positioning of the value that we bring to the consumers. And frankly, our consumers would go to the table for us. I know that mine would. Sure. They know exactly what we've been through together and the crazy stuff that has surfaced. But I think it's got to be a different, I'm not in charge of anything, but I think there's got to be a different effort to let part of the public help us tell our story and not just be a legal battle. But who knows what the best solution is. I do just think it's ridiculous that we are, as a profession, a prime target. But of course we are, because back to what we talked about earlier, realtors love to talk about their money. They love to talk about their status in the sales world, their status of commissions. So it looks like everybody's $1 million agent, but that's not true. And even if it were, we're taxed out the wazoo already as self-employed. And so there's a lot of different pieces of the story that aren't intersecting right now. And hopefully we'll get some concerted effort working together to make that change.
Yeah, no, I would hope so. I think that would have been, if they get it done anytime in a reasonable period of time, it'll be a very good thing for consumers. Because, if somebody can take and assign these mortgages that are at 4% and 5%, if they could, I think that
it would unlock
definitely
the marketplace, just as if you would fix the capital gains exemption amount, which was never indexed since it was introduced under the Clinton administration in 97. Those numbers haven't budged. And now, in Concord, North Carolina, where I am, 500 for a married couple, that exemption still works. But in New Jersey and New York and California and high cost markets, that's not going to come close to covering the amount of gains those folks have experienced since they've been in their houses. So now they have a disincentive to sell, because why would you sell your primary if you have to give the money back to the government?
There's an amazing book, Leigh, if you've never got, the real estate stuff is simpler for sure, but there's a book called No One Would Listen. And it was written by a gentleman who was for about a decade going to the FCC complaint, not the FCC, the financial bureau,
the
SEC. Thank you. I got to get my alphabet right. The SEC. And
okay, you were thinking football, and so you told yourself that was wrong, but SEC has two different spaces.
That's exactly what happened. And so,
and England has never won an SEC championship. Let me just point that out. So when it comes to World Cup, they can't touch us.
There you go. There you go. So this guy had been going to them for a decade, complaining that Bernie Madoff was running a Ponzi scheme. A decade. And to begin with, the guy is going in there and he's explaining it to the folks, and he comes out realizing like he didn't make his point, and he's feeling bad that like maybe I'm not sophisticated enough at how I explained it. Come to find out, and he realized this later on, they didn't understand how the transactions actually worked, because the folks that ran the SEC weren't the folks that could really cut it in the market. Otherwise, they would be working in the market, making 7- and 8-figure incomes, as opposed to be a government job. And so I think that part of this is, and the reason why it seems like politics is always so reactionary, is they don't really know how it works all that well. They wait for it to break, and then they come up with some solution that gives them more power and authority to help make it break even more the next time, it seems like.
Or you get the new Bernie Madoff, Sam Bankman-Fried, and he's not even been arrested. So Bernie Madoff was arrested right away because they didn't know what had gone wrong, but they knew it was evil. Now we know what's gone wrong, and we know how evil it is, and we have all the conversations, and yet the man is still on a New York Times panel. And all that tells us is that it's an even bigger reason to keep real estate in the center of your portfolio, because if all things go sideways, you're in a house with a roof over your head where your family can come eat supper, and you're not buying some imaginary crypto fortune out there that you didn't understand in the first place. So I think all of those interactions in the marketplace just drive home the value of the tangible nature of this asset. And frankly, it's why I love my multifamily investments, because I can even be a part of the affordable housing solution when I own less expensive apartment buildings. And that, to me, it's going to have an emotional and a financial return, as opposed to being involved in schemes that are completely being overlooked by our elected officials who think there are better. So I'll just stick with real estate. Thanks.
Oh, I knew we could be friends. You said the magic words, multifamily. I am such a big fan of multifam. I
wish I'd done it earlier in my career. So whoever's listening to this or watching this, you should do multifamily far earlier. I wish my first house, Josh, had been a duplex. If my dad had been on his A game, and granted, when I got into real estate, my dad was your old school realtor, single family guy. My first house, a single family house. Of course, no doc, because I was a new realtor and that was a thing back then. Ha ha, young people today, you don't have that. But your FHA is a 1-to-4 loan. Your VA is a 1-to-4 loan. Most of your conventional is 1-to-4. That means you don't have to buy single. You can go up to a quadplex. Why realtors don't talk about that more drives me completely insane, because if that first house for me had been a duplex, somebody would have paid my mortgage that whole time. And then I could have gone ahead and bought another duplex or a quad, and I could have a lot more doors than I do right now. And so currently I've been selling my single families and 1031ing into multifamilies to increase my doors. I'm
And
just
increase your
looking
basis for
into,
depreciation. Absolutely.
yes, go further faster than me, listeners. I mean, this is where you come to these podcasts to know your shit. It also means learning from my shit and say, I don't want to do it slowly. I want to do it quickly. All right. So do it quickly. Multifamily, mailbox money.
Multifamily and debt. That's where it's at. Borrow money. Don't over
Don't over
leverage.
lever, but lever your money correctly.
Absolutely. Stay in that 65, 70% LTV lane and live there unless it's your primary where you can go a
75
little.
is fine too.
I'm sorry, say that again.
75 is fine too.
75. Look, it depends
That's-
upon you, depends upon where you are. The younger you are, the more leverage you can take. And as you
Oh,
start pulling some
I have this.
risk out of portfolio. I'm a big fan though. I'm a
I'll
big
show
fan.
you. So look, this is my explainer for risk profiles.
I love it.
And so when you're at the bottom, you have a low risk profile, but you're safer here. Here you might tumble off, but the returns are better at the top. So if you want higher returns, you might tumble off. You're very safe here. So that's how I explain risk and return.
I love it. You know, it's so important because I think, Leigh, the reason why agents don't talk about it more is they genuinely do not understand the investment of real estate. When I explain, look, when I'm talking to people investing in real estate, I'm selling them the future. Because if you buy this house today and sell it tomorrow, you're losing money.
Right.
But if you hold that property, you get two things. You get the benefit, not only the rents, you get the future rents as well, what those rents are going to be in the future, and you get the appreciation of that property. So what I'm really selling you is the future. If you don't have the ability to project the future of this asset, you can't adequately sell in a meaningful way to the investor. You can't sit there and make the case for your thing. So agents talk about cap rate. The problem is cap rate has nothing to do with the future. It's
and they
looking
can't
at the present.
calculate it anyway. Let's be honest.
It's a true story. It's a true story. I mean, I was very fortunate. One of the biggest, coolest things that I ever had happen recently that I'm excited about is Miami Realtors, the largest realtor association in the country, bought my ACE Investor, the rights to my ACE Investor One class, right to teach differential cash flow. And it's going to be a requirement for post license for all agents in Miami. And I mean, look, if I can just make it so agents they've seen an internal rate of return and understand what that future looks like, the understanding that those numbers give you right away of how much more valuable your asset is over time and what you're selling. For me, I mean, it definitely, the lights came on like, oh, gee, yeah, of course, we got to get long in this, because the position I take is this right now. You could be long in cash or long in real estate. How you enjoying that inflation, guys? You think it's going to get any better anytime soon? If not, my product historically has outperformed inflation. Always. Like, real estate has got a great reputation, not the kind of reputation that makes you popular in high school. That's a different kind of reputation. But you know what? Consistent, like clockwork, every time there's inflation, because you win not just once, not twice, but 3 ways on inflation when you have real estate. The property appreciates to keep pace with inflation. The rents go up to keep pace with inflation. And you borrow the bank's money today and you pay them back with future garbage inflated money. You're winning 3 ways, which is why there was so much wealth generated in real estate from 1970 to 1985. All that wealth got built in real estate because of all that inflation.
And you missed the fourth big advantage is depreciation, which means those of you that get into this, you've got to get really comfortable with your CPA and your tax attorney, because there are massive improvements on the depreciation side. I mean, you could do a 40-year schedule and change your cash flow forever so that you can then take your dollars and lever them out. But let's add another angle to it outside of the dollars. For those of y'all that are watching or listening and you've got a real soft heart for social causes and you're worried about workforce housing and affordability, let me give you a little note here. The government is not a solution to anything. Everything they touch turns to shit.
Amen.
Is that the hedge funds and the institutional investors that are currently building apartments, they're building Class A. They're building hardwoods and granite and floor to ceiling glass and rooftop pools and concierge buildings. They're not building affordable stuff. So you, as a mom and pop investor, or your client base, the mom and pop investors are the key to affordable workforce housing. That's the C+B- stuff that I buy. It is not fancy. It is clean. It is not upgraded. It has a solid roof that does not leak. It has heating and air that works. We have windows that work and appliances that work, and it's cheap in the marketplace. Why do I invest in that? Because people have to have somewhere that's cheap to live. And despite the common parlance that everything has to be new and perfect all the time, There's a lot of people in every community that just want somewhere decent and safe to live. And I am a big fan of being an owner of that product so that I can bring it back to the community. And so if you want to be that social person, then do something with your money that will bring space to somebody else. And then, by the way, you also get a return on it. You're going to get the rent dollars back. And no, I'm not making money hand over fist, but I make a solid cash flow profit and I give back to my community. That's a win in a lot of different ways. And also my tenants, they are doing their best not to be reliant on the government either, because I'm there to make sure they have access to down payment assistance programs so that they can work their way toward home ownership one day, because I don't want them trapped in a rental forever. And spoiler alert, your government wants a nation of renters because they can be controlled. Property owners are hard to control because we like our little piece of dirt. Thank you very much. And we are a little bit harder to manage.
Absolutely. That ability to quietly enjoy the pursuit of happiness that the founders wanted to give us. And that idea, I love that idea so much, because in their understanding, when I teach ethics, this is one of the things I talk about, is the idea that pursuit of happiness to them was the pursuit of a life well lived, the pursuit of living the good life. And that is in keeping with what you're talking about, doing those things to give back because it's part of a life well lived. It's not just about the money. Usually we're chasing the money because we just never have quite enough of it, seems like. But a life well lived is having a work that you're proud of, that you go to every day, that you enjoy doing. That's all part of it. Doing work as a way to just earn a paycheck is you cheating yourself out of what could be a much more meaningful and worthwhile life. If you hate what you're doing,
Then stop doing it.
That's either stop doing it or figure out a new way to think about it that makes it so you don't hate doing it. Because I got to tell you what, you can learn to hate just about anything. You can learn to get sick and tired of just about anything. You got to take and deal with
mindset though, Josh. That's mindset. You either wake up in the morning deciding to find the positive and fire through, or you wake up in the morning determined to be miserable and make everybody around you miserable too. And then you act like everything was done to you. Well, spoiler alert, life happens. Life is not doing things to you. Life is just doing things. And the way that you react is on you. And I think this is a big mindset issue for a lot of realtors right now as the economy changes. They think the economy is doing things to them. Interest rates are happening to them. It is not happening to you. It is happening. The reaction that you have is you. So you either find a way to take this information from this episode and convey it back to people and say, holy smokes, never thought about this before. Hey, y'all, guess what I learned today? That's the difference between the one who wins no matter what, and then the one who says, well, I'll just, real estate's dead. I'm just gonna, woe is me, give up.
Next.
All right, fine.
Yeah.
If that's you, please give up, because I need more great people in real estate. I don't need any more whiners.
You know, Leigh, the way that I think we're on the same idea. I always talk about it. People, not just agents, but agents a lot of times, live in the passenger seat of their own life. You know, their life goes how things happen to them, and that gets them where they are, as opposed to, hey, look, this happened. Let me go get around behind the drive. Let's see what we're going to do. Let's get out of here.
Let's go.
Let's do something. And, you know, this life is so much about the things that we do and getting done what needs to be done. And sadly, too many people just let life kind of wash over them, as opposed to being an active participant in what I think is the most important pursuit, figuring out how you're going to get out of the tank what you're actually capable of. One of my favorite questions to ask agents, I do it in the room all the time. I say, who here agrees there's a better version of you inside of you you've never seen? Almost every hand goes up. I say, look, if your hand's not up, realize you've just conceded that you've peaked and it's all downhill from here. And then every other hand goes up, right? If there's a better version of you inside of you, whose job is it to get it out? And who's the biggest loser if you don't? If you don't, you're stuck with a lesser version of you.
And the good news is, because so many other people will sit back, if you're the person who's trying to go one step up and go learn one more thing and then give that back to the public and then press through, the market's yours. It doesn't matter what's happening out there.
Doesn't matter.
You have an unlimited amount of potential, and you will be so excited because you'll be moving forward and you won't even see all the grumpy people around you because you just push through it. It's like the story of buffaloes and cows. And I don't know if you talk about this a lot, but it's a fact of life. It's nature. It's real science, not science with a little TM on top, the fake science, but the real stuff. So if there's a big storm on the horizon If you see it coming, a buffalo will go towards the storm because they know that if they go through it sooner, they're on the other side sooner. Cows turn around and go away from the storm. They try to outrun it, but you can't outrun the storm. The storm is still coming. And so it's chasing the cows. And so they're scared for longer. And by the time the storm gets to them, they're in it longer because the storm stays with them. Meanwhile, the buffalo's already on the other side. So long story short, be a buffalo, not a cow.
And this is, I think, fundamentally why buffaloes are absolutely cooler than cows.
And bison meat's better for you too. It's leaner and it's got a higher amount of protein. You don't have to eat as much and it's very tasty.
And you know what? When you go to Yellowstone and those buffaloes walk across the road, they look at you and they're like, I'm walking here. You can wait.
You
and
will
you gotta,
wait.
Yeah, you will wait. Absolutely. There's complete confidence in their part.
But I like steak too, though. I'll be fair. I do love cows. I love milk. I love meat.
You know, cows are
I'm
wonderful.
a people person. People for the eating of tasty animals. That's my people.
If some animal is not harmed in the making of my meal, it's not a meal. So I'm with you 100%. I need to have like the little credit at the end of the movie. No animal was harmed. An animal was definitely harmed if I'm eating.
No animals were harmed accidentally.
Yeah, we did on purpose. We meant to do it. So let me kind of shift gears a little bit because I can tell we could be on this for a while because it seems like we're definitely coming from the same place.
And I feel like all your listeners are like, what the hell? And they're just enjoying this right now. So hello, friends. Enjoy the conversation.
Hi, guys. Yep. So let me ask you this, Leigh. What do you like best about what you do?
Oh, what do I love best about what I do? That's so easy. It's the hugs. And I'm an extrovert. And so I don't really need hugs like you extroverts do. But in real estate, you know, at that moment when you've helped somebody because you listened and you helped them figure out their solution and they have this sense of relief that I know what to do with mom's house now. I feel like I can move on. It got done. We survived the appraisal issue. We're done with the crazy neighbors, whatever was going on. It's so big because if you remember, people get divorced for a lot of reasons, but the number one reason is almost always financial. And so when you start realizing how big of a burden money can be, and then you realize that by the time somebody's selling real estate, the money is a big, big issue. So right now it's how much of our equity do we let go of to sell the house? What do we have to do to sell the house? We possibly missed the top of the market. So they're having an emotional adjustment to that, but the money is a burden. You get to the end of a transaction and they can breathe because now it's done and now they can move on to do other things, either with the money or just in life. And it's the same thing with my agents. And I love it when they finally step back from, I need the commissions, because new agents definitely are trying to figure out how to pay their bills while doing the right thing. And that's a really tricky tightrope to walk for the first couple of years. And I'm not denigrating you if you're an early career agent. I want you to know that all of us were early career at some point and we got paid and we were on top of the world and then nothing happened for 90 days and we were eating ramen noodles and then we sold 2 houses. And so you quit eating ramen noodles and you didn't prospect. And so you fell back down again. And so it's a wild peaks and valleys. But when I watch my newer agents finally get into the disciplined habits of doing the right things every day, and suddenly the wheels start turning all the time, and they're like, oh, I do have closings every month. People do need me all the time. And it's all because they put the right steps into place at the beginning. So that's the mother side of me, loves watching them get rewarded for their hard work. And then the totally emotional side of me likes the hugs when my clients are successful. So
that's awesome. That's awesome.
You know, we don't talk about that enough in real estate, that we do have all these monetary pieces. We do have all the knowledge and the ethics and the competence and the professionalism and the stuff going on. Both of those are happening on top of the big emotional ball that is real estate. And so you walk into somebody's house and it's more than the money. It's the babies get off the school bus here. And my mom had her last Thanksgiving here before she passed. And we bought these floors at Lumber Liquidators and we put them down ourselves. And so now all the emotion is doing this. And you're trying to cut through with logic and cut through with reality, and they're emotionally wrapped up, which is why a really great realtor is a very skilled person at navigating numbers and emotions, and then timelines and discipline and reality and somebody else's imaginary mindset. And it's a very, very interesting space, because if you look at anything else we do financially, we're talking big dollars. This is the only space where the big dollars are wrapped up with big emotion. Everything else, the expensive car is an expensive car and you like it very well. But if it wrecks, you're like, I'll go get another big car. But if your house burns down, it's
a lot more tied to it. Yeah.
The photos were in there. It's not the couch. It's the family, this and this towel that came from my great grandmother's house, and it's just wild. And the best agents can get their mind around both sides of it and then honor the person across the table from them by understanding both sides. And so you have to look at the whole picture, and it's hard.
Absolutely.
But holy crap, it's rewarding.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I tend to focus on the other side of it because I almost feel like the emotional side of the business is over pushed to some extent, but you're absolutely right. I mean, when I teach body language and all of this, it's all about trying to take and figure out where that person is so I can give them what they need. It's not about me trying to take and manipulate a deal.
No, it's understanding.
I say it's like a bell curve, right? And I'm trying to take and position the bell curve because I don't know this person, but as I'm learning them, I'm trying to take and change my pitch to figure out where I need to be to best suit what they need from me. I want to take and give them what they need. And I don't know that on the way in the door necessarily. And so I have to figure that out as the conversation goes through. And it's an important part of this business that, once again, it's one they don't talk a heck of a lot about. I really wish they would do a little bit more.
Well, we said it at the very beginning, right? And so if you have all the knowledge and then you understand the personality types and then you walk in the door, now you can pivot. But if you don't have the knowledge and you don't understand the personality types and then you walk in the door, you're the one that's trapped and you really can't
blind
to serve them. And so it's definitely a progression that happens. But if you're walking into a listing appointment for an estate sale, a lot of realtors are like, that's easy. They just want the cash. And so they pull their comps and they walk in the door. But then you walk in and that person needs to unload about cousin Johnny, who is a deadbeat, who still has a claim to the estate, and he's going to get more than everybody else. If you are emotionally active with that person, you're going to let them unload because they have to or they can't move forward. But now you know how to say, all right, so it looks like we're going to walk away with 200,000 here, but if Johnny's going to get 50 because of his debts, let's just put that in the spreadsheet and let's deal with it. The person across from you can deal with it if you let them get the emotion out first. If you never let that happen, then you're going to be fighting with them the whole time and they'll hate you and you'll hate them. And yes, the house might get sold and yes, you might make some dollars on it, but it's not going to be nearly as satisfying as if you follow the correct progression. Get the knowledge, learn the personality types and the body language, now pivot to what you're in front of.
You know, Leigh, and you bring up a really good point there because it's so quick that this happens and it's so prevalent in real estate where we wind up in almost a combative position to our customer. I was in a class the other day and the agent was talking to me about how she was getting ready to fire her customer. That's how you kind of regain authority is you're going to fire them. And I got the lay of the land, the situation from her. And, she thought they were going to get ready to take this listing away and that they were just trying to run out the clock in the listing and all this kind of stuff. Cause the son had come back in the picture and it was the son's house they were selling. I said, well, I don't want this deal from the customer. I want every deal they're ever going to do. I don't close deals. I close customers for life. Right. So I said to her, you know what you do before they take and tell you they want you to cancel the listing? You call them up and you say, hey, look, I heard your son came back. You want me to cancel the listing? Let's get this off the market for you. What can we do? What's going to best help your situation? I came back a month later. Not only did they not take the listing away, she sold the house. They agreed to her terms. And oh, by the way, they're going to give her their $3 million listing of their personal home. Exactly what you talked about. Look, get out in front of, you are supposed to be somebody that's not in this customer's life for a transaction. That's
or if you are in there for a transaction, that you are a neutral, amazing professional who is not married to the outcome. And so it's possible to have one transaction clients. It's also possible to have the ones that turn into multiples. But to your story here, she was going to be faced with probably the same outcome either way. Either they run out the clock and the listing goes, or she calls them and says, I heard about the son, and the listing goes. However, because she went to proactive road, the buffalo, she went to the storm instead of running away from it. She found out that she did get through the storm and there was something better on the other side. And so worst case scenario, it would have been no different than what she was already doing. But the best case wound up being a zillion times better.
Absolutely.
Again, be the buffalo. I think we're going to call this Be the Buffaloes this episode.
You know what? It's a good one. I've never heard that before. So thank you for that. I may have
to for your class, and so please go right ahead, but you have to quote.
Thank you so much for your permission. I definitely appreciate that because it is a very good one. I want to give you, actually, I think I know what you're going to say at this point, but If you could give customers, not customers, listeners, one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, who are the listeners? I mean, do we have random consumers out there listening to this, trying to pick a great realtor, or is it only realtors? Have you evaluated your audience?
My audience is anybody that wants to take in sales, that wants to start closing customers for life. That's what we're all about here, is to stop just doing deals. Even if it's a one-time customer, doesn't matter. I should always do this business in such a way that I'm trying to get their future business. I don't want them to ever, if they have something that needs me, I don't want them to look for anybody else.
Well, that is a pretty impressive mindset right there. So here's my one piece of advice to anybody in sales. And I'm going to give a second one to a random consumer who wandered over here. If you're in sales, you need to be where you are.
Okay.
And by that, I mean, if you want to be successful in sales, this little piece of poison that sits in your hand is either upside down where you can't see it flashing, or it's in your car, or it's in your pocketbook. It is nowhere in sight. I am so tired of sales professionals who make an excuse of, but I have to handle this one phone call. I'm waiting on an important text. The minute you tell somebody that, you just told them they weren't as important as somebody else coming next, which is the same thing if I'm at a networking event. If I'm talking to somebody, I am going to be eyeball to eyeball with them. I'm not looking over their shoulder to see who's coming next, which is kind of hilarious because millennials tell me it's creepy how I make eye contact, but they're just unaccustomed to unbroken eye contact. And so be where you are means be unbroken, dial in and really listen. And if we learned anything during this ridiculous COVID era, it's how disconnected we all got. If you really want to get connected to people, you got to slow down and really lean in. And by leaning in, I don't mean just wait for them to stop talking so you can talk. I mean, absorb what they're saying and even think for a second first and say, well, now that you said that, I'm seeing this as a possible outcome. I see this as a possible solution. The best salespeople actually never have to sell. They have to be open to selling those. So when somebody has gotten down that far, like, well, do you want to buy this house? And if they say yes, they say yes. And if they say no, you say, all right, so what should I change before I waste any more of your time? Because it's very fair to ask somebody how you can be a better steward of their time, because their time is finite, not just yours. Now,
And that shows them you value it. Absolutely.
The random consumer who's wandered on here looking for an agent, I will tell you this, when you talk to prospective agents about being your buyer representative or your listing representative, the number one thing you have to ask them is, are they all in for real estate? And if they ask you back what that means, I want you to ask them if they are paying attention to planning and zoning meetings. Are they paying attention to school board meetings? Are they paying attention to political changes that could impact your property taxes and your zoning and where new builds are going? Are they paying attention to economic trends and industry trends? Could they tell you whether a builder has a good reputation, a no reputation, or a sour reputation? And could they give you access to reasonable mortgage lenders in the marketplace that you will even see at the grocery store, who won't scam you when it comes to the biggest investment you're likely to make? And is that realtor all in for real estate? Meaning, are they investing in the product they sell? Do they understand that real estate has multiple purposes out there besides the place where you lay your head down? If that realtor understands even a fraction of that, you've got a winner. If they look at you cross-eyed and say, well, I mean, I'm all in because I belong to the MLS and I can put a sign in your yard, then you need to graciously thank them for their time invested and move along. Because consumer friends, until you have signed an agreement for that realtor to be your agent and have the fiduciary obligations to you, you are a free agent to go find somebody who is worthy of your business. And I promise you, there are amazing, great, professional, competent, knowledgeable realtors who are all in for real estate in every zip code in this country. And if you need help finding one, Josh or I can direct you to them, but you do not have to settle for the mediocrity he and I discussed earlier.
Absolutely. Good stuff, Leigh. Thank you so much. So last question, probably the most important one. If folks are like, they would like some more Leigh in their life, where can folks find you?
Because obviously we have a lot of the same opinions here, but mine is delivered with a Southern accent, which
Makes it far better, of course.
You don't have, but I am at Leigh Thomas Brown on most networks. And of course, my main website is leighbrown.com, where you can get all my virtual courses. My current one is dominatethisrecession.com, because I do actually believe that recessions are a great time to build business if you're doing it correctly. So I'm excited for the opportunity to serve, even when the macro climate looks different. And if that's you too, then come play along with me and follow all my training and stuff online, because it's all there, including my Sunday devotionals, which are my favorite videos and get the highest view counts of anything I post.
Love it. That's great. That's great stuff. You know, I do some stuff for my men's group, and I think sometimes it's the best stuff that I do, period, as well. It's valuable. It really is, again, part of that good quality, full picture of life and doing all of life well. So Leigh, thank you so much for your time. It was genuinely a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. And thank you to everybody who hung out for this entire conversation. I fully expect you to go back to the top of this podcast and subscribe, give it 5 stars, and leave a comment for Josh about the other kind of content you need from him. And he didn't ask me to say that, but that's for real, because if you like this content, then let the search engines know.
Thank you very much, Leigh. I appreciate the plug. All right, guys, till next time.